Hey guys, welcome to Draw Near Moment. My name is Titus. It's that moment of the week where we draw near to Christ together. What is the easiest yet most difficult thing to do? Let's get to it. Hey guys, first off, I'd like to apologize that I got something going on up here. This massive zit has been wrecking the top of my forehead for about a week now, and I even debated about doing Draw Near Moment at all this week, but I'm committed to this. I'm committed to you guys, so let's do it anyway. So what is the most difficult yet the most easiest thing to do? Forgive. Forgiveness. Forgiveness is one of those awkward subjects because we don't like it, you know? It's like, because I know that each of us have our own sad story about how someone did us wrong, how someone said something about us, how someone took something from you. Maybe it was your childhood, maybe it was your parents, or maybe it was a friend, or maybe it was just somebody who you trusted that just backstabbed you when it mattered to you the most. Forgiveness. It's in the aftermath of those moments that you have a decision to make. And it is a decision. And that's why I say it's the easiest thing to do, but it's the hardest thing because it's so personal, but it's easy because it's a choice. It's a decision. It's a decision you make. Do you actually hold them accountable for this thing that they did for the rest of their lives? And do you, whenever you're in that moment where you have the choice to forgive, do you let go or do you let it in and inside of you and just let it fester inside of you? Because forgiveness, I found, is something that you don't do for them. It's something that you do for you. Now, one thing I want you to understand is that that your forgiveness is not just between you and the person that you're upset with. It's actually between somebody else as well. There's someone else that enters this whole conversation, and that's God. Jesus talked about forgiveness all the time. In fact, there's a passage right here in Matthew 6:14. It's a really short little 2-verse thing. Let's check it out. It says, "For if you forgive other people when they sin against you, your heavenly Father will forgive you also. But if you do not forgive others their sins, your Father will not forgive your sins." There's this sense in which Jesus is like, hey, I have forgiven you. And if I can forgive you, then you can forgive other people. But if you can't do that, there's a sense in which Jesus, and part of me wants to be like, no, that cannot be true. Is my salvation really on the line with this? But Jesus makes it serious. He's like, no, you need to understand how important forgiveness is. Now, there was another character in the Bible that we don't talk about very often, but it's involved with a story we have talked about before, and it was David and Bathsheba. Now, this is a dark chapter, really, in David's life, where he went off the rails. He, up to this point, had done pretty much everything God had asked him to do, and he had seen a lot of success as a result, and his life was going great. But then he decided to wreck his life by sleeping with a woman that was married. He accidentally got her pregnant, then killed her husband, and then took her as his own wife. And the thing you have to understand about this is, that part of me is like, wow, that was too far. But you have to understand that God had redeemed him. God had restored him. He had asked for forgiveness, that God's mercy knows no bounds. And if God has forgiven him, who are we to say, no, God, he went too far? But there was somebody who hadn't forgiven him. And when you understand their situation, you kind of understand why they may not want to forgive David for this. And his name was Ahithophel. Ahithophel was actually, and part of me is like, this is just a painful thing about it. Ahithophel was David's advisor, a trusted friend, and really David was frightened of Ahithophel because he was so smart, so intelligent, and he was someone he didn't want to cross. But he kind of did cross because Bathsheba was Ahithophel's granddaughter. Yeah, imagine the awkwardness there. Ahithophel was incredibly upset with David and never really straight out says it, but you can kind of imply by looking at all the links that Ahithophel was pretty ticked. In fact, when one of David's sons decides, you know what, I want to be king now, I'm going to get rid of you, David, and I'm going to be the king, and we're going to have this whole war thing, and I'm going to win. Ahithophel was like, all right, let's do that. Anything to get back at David. But what you have to understand about this story is that this unforgiveness, this thing that God had already said, you know what, I have forgiven you. All of this, God had forgiven David for. And as a result of all this, the fact that Ahithophel could not forgive David and could not let this go, not only did it cost thousands of people their lives in war, it cost David's son, the one that rebelled, it cost him his life, but it also cost Ahithophel his own life. He took his unforgiveness to the grave. And so what is unforgiveness costing you? There are too many people out there that have allowed something that happened to them impact everything about them for like the rest of their lives. And in this case that we looked at with Ahithophel, it cost him his actual life. But maybe in your case, it's costing you your quality of life. Why do we let things bother us so much? It's like, well, no, they deserve it. They deserve to not be forgiven. They have done wrong. But listen, forgiveness is something that you do for you. You do to get the thing off your chest. It's where you go inside, like you have this wound that's been infected and just costing everything of you, and you just kind of have to reopen it, relive the pain of it, and then let it go. Because it's something you have to do for you. You don't do it for them, you do it for you. You need to let things go so you can move on and you can have a better life as a result. Now, I was talking to somebody a while ago and they used this really cool example, and they said, forgiveness is like drinking poison and expecting for the other person to get ill. Forgiveness is like drinking poison and expecting the other person to get ill. It only hurts you. You are not doing yourself a favor when you hold a grudge against somebody. I know it hurts. I know it's painful. But you are not doing yourself a favor as a result. You are impacting everything about yourself. Now, I was reminded of this because I have some friends that they're married, they have 2 kids, and they had a falling out with a mother and father, one of their mothers and fathers. And as a result, they haven't talked to them in years as a result. There was just a massive argument and it just kind of fell apart. And part of me is like, man, you guys are totally right. Like, they did you wrong and you just need to chill until they want to say, I'm sorry. But they decided, after years of this, that, what, let's pick up the phone. Let's give them a call. See if we can patch things up and see if we can pick up where we left off, because they found out that, what, it's not worth it. The grudge that we're holding is costing us way more. And it's just so unworth it. And even though they are the ones who probably did the most of the wrong, we probably had a little bit to share in that too. And I can at least say sorry for that. And it's amazing. They called him up. They had the difficult conversation. And as a result, they have a relationship with their family again, which is amazing. Something that they never thought would ever happen. They thought these people were so far out of their lives and it was over. And they got something out of it. Listen, I know that there are cases where he's like, you know what? No, Ty, it's like, I am right. They did me wrong, and if they want to come and apologize, then maybe, just maybe, I will take them back as they're groveling on the ground. But the truth is, that doesn't happen a lot. And you have to ask yourself, is being right really worth it? Right, I think rightness is overrated. I think making right is something powerful. That's one thing I always say to myself. It's more about making the situation right than it is actually about being right. Because rightness is just overrated. But making the situation right and bringing someone back to your life, is it really worth all that it's costing you? Is it really worth, this severed relationship? Is it really worth it just to be right? I think I would rather have the relationship back. And I think you should too. So maybe that means a difficult conversation. Maybe that means just letting something go. Forgiveness is a constant decision, but it's one worth making. Well, guys, thank you so much for joining me for this episode of Draw Near Moment. I hope it's helpful. I hope some relationships get restored as a result, and maybe just God starts working on your heart and as a result of all this. Anyway, just again, thank you so much for joining me. It's something I do every Wednesday, and if you'd like to keep in touch with what I do, you can hit that subscribe button below, and you can also follow me on Twitter. That's the best ways to keep in touch with me and follow what I'm doing. Also, you might be noticing that I'm trying to up the quality of the actual video and the audio and all that stuff, and I'm a little excited about it, but at the same time, I'd love to hear your thoughts on it. So if you like what I'm doing, or you don't like what I'm doing, or you have some suggestions, maybe a different set idea or something, let me know in the comments. I would love to hear what you have to say. And also, if you have any forgiveness stories that you'd like to share to maybe give someone else encouragement, let me know those in the comments too. I will see you next week, next Wednesday, for another episode of Draw Near Moment. I'll see you then.